General Hospital spoilers tease that Kristina's story is slowly morphing into a haunting tragedy. As the recent shifts in her emotions and behavior can no longer be dismissed as mere signs of a volatile personality. Instead, they reveal a dangerous chain reaction triggered by a crime she's desperately trying to keep hidden. Lately, Kristina is no longer the impulsive, headstrong, yet pure-hearted young woman everyone once knew. Every action, every glance, every time she stands silently in the kitchen or stares out the window, she carries a darkness even she doesn't fully understand. The psychological shift unfolding within Kristina is rooted in guilt, a deep fear of being exposed. The torment of having hurt those who didn't deserve it, and the crushing weight of living in a family that seems increasingly alien. The act of tampering with the brakes, once thought to be a reckless, angry outburst aimed at Ava, was expected to end in a confrontation or warning. But instead, it led to a near-fatal accident involving Rick and Elizabeth. Yet what's truly terrifying isn't the act itself, it's how Kristina has hidden it. She let her mother, Alexis, get dragged into a blackmail scheme. She's allowed others to suffer to avoid facing the truth that would destroy the carefully constructed image of herself. From that moment, a new psychological descent began. Kristina is no longer just running from the truth, she's beginning to adapt to the darkness. When Lucky uncovers the truth, the web of lies begins to unravel. And Kristina spirals into deep emotional distress. She tries to appear normal, but the gasps for breath when she's alone, the silent breakdowns in the bathroom, and the lost look in her eyes when speaking to Molly or Sunny reveal the fracture within her. Kristina knows that if the truth comes out, if she's arrested, tried, sentenced, it won't just be a legal punishment. It will be the final confirmation that she has completely lost who she once was. The bright, innocent Kristina who once fought for justice and love will be gone, buried by her own hands. But what haunts her more is the possibility that she won't be arrested. That Sunny might intervene. That Jason might clean up the scene. That Alexis might sacrifice her own reputation and take the blame. And if that happens, if Kristina walks free because of others' protection, what will be left of her conscience? An unpunished crime never truly disappears. It simply lies dormant, waiting in the silence, returning in nights without light, when Kristina is alone with herself. That is a prison far worse than any cell, the prison of memory, of guilt. Of living as someone who appears free but knows she is trapped by her own self-loathing. If Kristina goes to trial, she will face justice. But if she doesn't, she will face something even more brutal, her family's forgiveness. And forgiveness without confession is not healing, it is a deeper entrenchment into lies. Kristina now lives in a spiral where every decision leads to pain, for herself, her mother, her sister, those who once loved her, and even the victim she never had the courage to apologize to. Her story is no longer about a single crime. It is a lingering obsession. A psychological sentence consuming her day by day, as the final fragments of her innocence are devoured by the shadows. Every step she takes in the Corinthos house, every hesitant word to Molly, every glimpse of Elizabeth from afar feels like a countdown to the inevitable, the moment when no one can protect her anymore, when the law no longer delays, when the truth can't be bent. And Kristina must finally ask herself, am I still a person, if I ignored the only chance to save my own soul? And that is what makes her story truly terrifying. Not that Kristina might go to prison, but that she might not. And that could mean she may never be truly free again. Molly and Kristina, two sisters born into the Davis family, now stand on opposite sides of a psychological war unlike any they've faced. Understanding has been replaced with suspicion. Blood ties are suffocating under the weight of moral pressure. Sisterhood is being torn apart by truths too dark to speak aloud. What's happening between them isn't just a clash of worldviews or the usual friction between strong personalities. It's now a real war, a confrontation with sides, weapons, consequences, and a darkness threatening to consume everything they once shared. Molly, always a believer in reason, law, and justice, now bears immense pressure, not just from within, as a rising prosecutor, but also from the ethical foundation she's spent years building. Upon discovering that Kristina, her own sister, may have been responsible for the tampered brakes that nearly killed Rick and Elizabeth, Molly can no longer remain silent. Even though Alexis tries to cover it up, and Sunny attempts to bury it, for Molly, the truth is still the truth. And choosing to protect Kristina would mean betraying the very principles that define her. The pressure Molly feels comes from all directions: family, society, colleagues, but most painfully, from her own heart. She is stretched between justice and loyalty, between truth and blood. And the more she wrestles with herself, the more she sees that Kristina is no longer the sister she once admired. She sees in Kristina a growing instability, a confusion bordering on madness. Kristina's behaviors can no longer be dismissed as impulsive, they become psychological reactions threatening to lead her down a path of self-destruction. Kristina, in contrast, feels cornered. To her, Molly is no longer a sister, but a judge. She no longer hears compassion in Molly's voice, only cold eyes, loaded questions, and the presence of someone who might drag her to court in the name of principle. Kristina can't control her emotions. She explodes. She lashes out. Her rage turns into confrontation. And from there, madness begins to take root, not because she's lost her mind, but because she feels isolated, pushed out of the family she once fought so hard to protect, right or wrong. Every conversation between them now feels like a battle. Every word, a wound. Molly brings facts, legal reasoning, files, and moral arguments like a prosecutor. Kristina responds with tears, biting sarcasm, and bitter accusations that Molly never truly understood her. From this rupture, a family war is forming, not just between two women, but between two ideologies, two generations. Two irreconcilable ways of living. Kristina is in free fall. If no one pulls her back, she will plunge fully into psychological darkness, where the voices in her head constantly remind her that she's a criminal, a failure, someone unworthy of love. And frighteningly, Molly's actions, though rational, could be the final drop that causes Kristina to lose all control. If Kristina goes to prison, it won't just be a legal sentence. It will be the final nail in their relationship, the end of any hope for reconciliation. Molly may see herself as a champion of justice, but Kristina will see her as the person who severed the last thread to family. This conflict doesn't end with them. It spreads across the Davis family. Alexis is caught between her daughters. Sunny is torn between anger and fatherly instinct. Jason walks the line between silence and duty. Every character is being pulled into the vortex, with Kristina at the center, both victim and perpetrator, both a cry for help and the one holding the emotional detonator. This is no longer just conflict. This is war, where every word can be a weapon, every silence a sin, and every choice could redefine the fate of an entire family. And at the center of it all, Kristina is quietly unraveling, not because she wants to destroy everything, but because she no longer knows how to survive without being crushed by the darkness she created. Alexis is falling into a state of despair as she watches her two daughters, Molly and Kristina, become entangled in a painful confrontation between morality and blood ties. As legal pressure mounts and dark secrets come to light, Alexis finds herself with no other choice but to beg Molly to stop. This is no longer a mother-daughter conversation, but a desperate plea from a mother who once sacrificed her honor to protect one child, now bowing her head to ask another for forgiveness, for her sister. Alexis's plea is not easy to voice. She knows that Molly is firm, principled, and lives by the law. But she also knows that beneath that tough exterior is a heart full of conflict, a young woman who has never truly stopped loving Kristina, even though arguments and hurtful words have strained their bond day by day. Alexis brings up memories of their childhood, the deep connection that no court ruling could ever restore if lost. She doesn't deny that Kristina was wrong, but she refuses to believe that prison is where her daughter belongs. She speaks of the pain of a mother caught between two daughters, knowing that any decision could mean losing them both. And then, a call from TJ comes at a crucial moment. just as Molly inches closer to forwarding Kristina's case to the district attorney. The call acts as a sudden brake, halting the collapse in motion. TJ, normally rational and composed, chooses to speak from the heart. He doesn't approach Molly as a doctor or partner, but as someone who has quietly witnessed Kristina's breakdown in recent days. He describes her disoriented gaze, uncontrollable panic attacks, the silent tears she sheds when she thinks no one is watching. He doesn't ask Molly to forgive Kristina, but he earnestly urges her to reconsider, to understand that sometimes justice isn't found in a courtroom, but in choosing the path that gives a person a chance to heal. The situation grows more complicated when leaks from the DA's office reveal that the Corinthos family is lobbying hard to protect Kristina at all costs. Psychiatrists and medical professionals are being brought in to document her mental instability, with the aim of shifting the case from a criminal charge to a therapeutic intervention. One of Sunny's key strategies is to have Kristina admitted to a specialized psychiatric facility, where she would be isolated, treated, and most importantly, kept away from courtrooms, prosecutors, and a jail sentence. It's not an ideal solution, but perhaps the only way to spare Kristina formal incarceration. And it's at this point that Molly's inner turmoil explodes. She sees through her family's maneuvering, the reports, the last-minute evaluations, the conveniently sourced experts, everything serving one purpose, to save Kristina. But she also knows that remaining silent would make her complicit in the cover-up. It would be a betrayal of the justice she once believed in. All the weight crashes down on Molly at once. Alexis's voice, TJ's whispered appeals, pressure from relatives, friends, and the desperation in Kristina's eyes. It leaves her unable to distinguish right from wrong, duty from love. She begins to realize that sometimes justice isn't about harsh sentences, but about compassion, about accepting that people make mistakes, and if punished the wrong way or at the wrong time, that mistake can destroy whatever humanity remains. And so, instead of pushing for Kristina to stand trial, Molly begins to seriously consider the proposal to admit her sister to a psychiatric facility. Not as a privilege, but as a softer, yet no less serious, form of accountability. A space to protect the public, and give Kristina a chance to heal, face her actions, and seek redemption. But in that choice, a bitter truth emerges. Even if Kristina avoids prison by being committed to a mental institution, she is still imprisoned, by guilt, trauma, and the irreversible fractures in her family. This story, ultimately, is no longer about one person's crime. It's about the limits of law when facing tragedies that are too personal, too intimate, too deep to be judged solely by Penal Code 123. It's about motherhood placed on a moral scale, about sisterhood crushed under the weight of justice, and about a family desperately trying to hold itself together through decisions no one is certain are right. At the heart of this storm are Diane and Alexis. Standing at the final crossroads where even the smallest action could have irreversible consequences, not just for one person, but for the futures of the two girls they love so deeply. Kristina and Molly. Caught between legal and emotional turmoil, these two strong women, once the pillars of logic in courtroom battles, now face a lawless war. The battle to save a family on the verge of breaking apart. Their last efforts are not just a race against time, but against fading hope. Molly, with her steadfast commitment to justice and principle, drifts further from her mother's outstretched hand. Kristina spirals into psychological crisis, lost in guilt, panic, and a sense of betrayal by her own family. And now, with all truths laid bare, all lies exposed, Diane and Alexis know that time for negotiation is over. Now is the time for choices. Fight to the end, or lose everything. One of the greatest challenges they now face is the shifting emotional balance within Molly. A single call, a conversation, even a glance between her and Kristina could change everything. Molly is no longer just a cold prosecutor, she is a sister, a daughter, a woman bearing the scar of broken trust. And Kristina, though many believe she's lost control, is still the sister Molly once deeply loved. In this inner conflict, Diane and Alexis find a sliver of hope, that as long as Molly still feels, still struggles inside, then not all doors are closed. But just as that fragile hope begins to flicker, new pressures from the legal world and public opinion emerge. Kristina's psychiatric report is leaked, along with paparazzi photos of her being escorted to treatment via a back entrance, sending the media into a frenzy. A segment of the public begins to question whether the Corinthos family, once again, is using power to evade justice. This public backlash not only intensifies pressure on Diane as a lawyer, but pushes Alexis into a corner. She cannot let her daughter be publicly shamed, but she also cannot deny that she's lobbied behind the scenes to keep Kristina out of court. Then, Alexis makes a bold move that changes everything. In a private meeting with Diane, she offers to take responsibility for orchestrating Kristina's avoidance of criminal prosecution. She's willing to sacrifice her reputation, her social standing, and her professional credibility for one thing, to preserve Kristina's future. Diane is stunned, but understands that this may be the only path to helping Molly feel that justice has been served, without crushing Kristina completely under the weight of the legal system and public outrage. When Molly learns of Alexis's decision, she's shocked. She never imagined her mother, once a symbol of justice and legal strength, would make such a sacrifice. As for Kristina, upon hearing what her mother has done, she doesn't cry, doesn't speak. She simply sits in her treatment room for hours, clutching her hands together as if trying to hold on to the last piece of herself. It is the only moment of true silence between the two sisters amid the chaos, no accusations, no excuses. Only the raw, painful truth lying between them. The shock does not come from Alexis's decision itself, but from what it forces her daughters to confront, not a victory or defeat, but the fact that they are both fragments of the same broken heart. Molly and Kristina are forever changed. One discovers for the first time that justice cannot be separated from compassion. The other learns that love is not about blind forgiveness, but about taking responsibility and finding the strength to rise again. Their future, as Alexis and Diane well know, will never be peaceful again. But from the darkest place, a new path begins to form. There's no clear light, but there is hope. That a family, even fractured and wounded, can be mended with enough love, courage, and women who never give up on each other. And from here, any new beginning between Molly and Kristina will no longer be built on pressure or duty, but on a foundation that is painful, yes, but profoundly sincere. Kristina was no longer the silent girl waiting for her trial. No longer the daughter who bowed her head to listen to her mother's intervention. No longer the sister who tried to mend the broken bond with Molly with hopeless apologies. After all the mental turmoil, the crying in the dark, the accusations, the cold meetings of lawyers, doctors, and even relatives discussing how to deal with the Kristina problem, she had now stood up. But her standing up did not mean recovery or repentance. It took the form of rebellion. And this time, Kristina was certain she would not endure another moment of so-called protection from her family. Kristina's rebellion did not come in the form of a scream or a violent outburst. It began with a cold silence. She refused to see the psychologists summoned by Sunny and Alexis. She stopped responding to questions from her lawyers, the medical examiner, even Alexis herself. And then she suddenly released a recording, a secret conversation between Rick and Ava, in which Rick implicitly admitted that he was willing to use his personal influence to ensure that Kristina was tied down in a treatment facility, rather than facing trial, not out of compassion, but because he wanted to conceal his true role in the chain of events that led to his and Elizabeth's near-fatal accident. The recording was widely circulated by a local media outlet within minutes of being sent. Immediately, the public opinion was no longer about Kristina's guilt, but about who was manipulating the system to control what. And while Sunny tries to stem the media fire, Kristina's second act makes things worse. She personally sends files, documents, and personal diaries to a group of independent investigative reporters, detailing how she was stalked, how Molly was favored in family hearings, and how psychological abuse was considered proper parenting by Rick and, in part, Sunny. Kristina doesn't fight back out of anger. She does it because she realizes that, rightly or wrongly, she has been made into a symbol of failure, a failure as a daughter, a sister, a citizen, and even a human being with the right to make mistakes without being overshadowed by someone else's reputation. And as she stands up, the system around her begins to crumble, layer by layer. Rick, who believed he had covered his tracks, now faces an investigation for abuse of power. Sunny is questioned about using unverified psychiatrists to create fake cases. And Molly, who once thought she was fighting for justice, is turned against her, questioning whether she is truly acting as an impartial prosecutor or simply a prejudiced sister. Kristina doesn't stop there. She continues to write directly to the hospital board, asking for a re-examination of the psychiatrist Sunny funds. She posts on her personal blog, detailing the feelings of someone so loved that she was locked up for not following a script. And for the first time, the Port Charles community no longer sees her as a mentally unstable person, but as someone who is fighting, albeit belatedly, to reclaim her own voice. It is Kristina's actions that put Rick, Sunny, and Molly in unprecedented danger. If Rick is found guilty of abusing his power, his entire political career will collapse. Sunny, who has always manipulated from the shadows, may be dragged into the legal spotlight, where girl-centric actions are no longer acceptable. Molly, who was not directly involved, now faces a conflict of interest investigation, having suggested Kristina be committed to a mental institution rather than brought to trial. Kristina knows she may be screwing things up. But for the first time in months of being treated like a shadow, she feels alive, not under control, but under her own power. And from that outburst, she makes a simple but shocking statement. I don't want forgiveness. I want freedom. And in that echo, all of Port Charles is forced to listen, not with pity, but with fear that once the victim starts fighting back, everyone who once stood in the name of protecting her could be next on trial.